Welcome, everyone, to the Intactivist Voice podcast. And I'm so happy today that I get to introduce Thomas Carney, who's a true leader in gender equality and believes that bodily autonomy is where that starts. And that goes for everyone. So, and definitely how to steer that narrative to all children deserve an intact body. And I'm going to let Thomas has got an incredible amount of information for us. So go for it, Thomas.
Well, thank you for having me. First, let me just show you this shirt that I had made up,
Not harmless.
which you can't read it because it's backwards. But I
No,
think
I did. No, I can read it. I read it.
it's okay.
No, it's right
So there
way.
you go.
Yep.
Might be a little bit easier if I show you, if you don't mind, here, if you can see that.
Circumcision.
Is it coming up?
Yep.
Circumcision is not harmless. Thousands of nerve endings are removed, and then frenulum, ridgeband, meniscus corpuscles are removed forever. And I have worn this in public several times. And my goal is to get someone to stop and talk about it, which so far I've got some curious looks, but I haven't had anyone actually stop and talk about it. But the message of the shirt, I like talking about the anatomy of the foreskin and really emphasize on the physical damage because the consent aspect, of course, that matters. And then invoking images of the infant being in pain, of course, that matters. But the only way I really think we're going to turn the ship around and get Americans on board with intactivism is if we convince men that for the rest of their lives and for their entire lives thus far, they have been enjoying sexuality significantly less than they should have been because they are missing nerve endings and they are missing erogenous tissue that has been sliced off. That is how you're going to sell it. And wearing that shirt, I gotta say, it feels empowering in a way. It feels like I'm doing something. It feels like I'm kind of fighting back. And I imagine probably your audience does not need to see this, but just in case there's someone watching who isn't familiar with what the things were that I just mentioned. These are four things that I wish every American man knew what they were and sat down and Googled or wikied or looked up what they are. The penile frenulum, the ridge band, meniscus corpuscles, inner mucosa. Press pause and Google if you want to. I'll get more detail in a little bit. Right now, I'm just kind of introducing it. But these are the parts of the foreskin that get cut off and removed permanently from circumcision. And I think if people actually knew what these four things were, circumcision would be done. We would never do it. So
Yes.
that's my little introduction.
They don't know what they're missing because they've never had it and they've never seen one. And even if they saw another man's penis in a pornography or something, it would have been erect and the foreskin would have been retracted. They would have never known. How could they possibly know what a real intact penis would look like? So, and you're keying right into where I want to go with this, and that's how do we wake up the 100 million men in the United States of America who's quote unquote say, I'm fine, when they don't even know what they've lost.
Yeah, I always like to think of it like people who are born colorblind. For the most part, other than a few jobs where if you cut the red wire, you get shocked to death. For the most part, a person can be colorblind and never really know it, and yet they are missing out. That's an analogy I sometimes see men who got cut as an adult say. It's like going from having television to black and white television. Another analogy is like the difference between rubbing the palm of your hands or rubbing the back of your hands. It's another one I've heard guys say.
Well, especially
And
the very light touch, the very
yeah,
light touch of rubbing that, not just scraping it. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. And it's mystifying though in a way that intactivism isn't more popular. I understand the reasons why men have this psychological defense mechanism. They don't want to think that this happened to them. And I understand that politically it's a almost impossible issue to talk about. But the fact that I was going to say such a fringe issue, but is it such a fringe issue? Because I never got any negative pushback wearing this shirt, which I was expecting to. And 50% of the time, if I bring this up to a guy that I know, he agrees. Now, obviously, I'm in the intactivist manosphere space, so in those spaces, it's damn near 100%. But on social media, if I go to a random Reddit post, YouTube video, Facebook post, the comments are overwhelmingly pro-intactivist. So what is stopping us from making this next leap? And in the lobby before we started this, I think you kind of came up with a possible solution, and I kind of feel the same way. And that's exactly what this shirt is supposed to be. It's telling people don't think about a pink elephant. I want to make it somewhere. I want to make it something that is everywhere. Something that you could go to the gym today and you weren't planning on thinking about circumcision, but I was there wearing this and you saw me. So now you are thinking about it. I want people in Walmart. I want people in Trader Joe's. I want people in the bus. I want people on the streets with circumcision shirts, hats, bumper stickers. I might go to the event. You'll probably be there the end of this month in DC. Are you going to that?
Oh,
I'm
yes.
gonna, I'm
You're
gonna,
going to Integrity Awareness Week? Oh,
it's
fantastic.
gonna
Yeah.
depend on.
I am going to be there the 28th, 29th, and 30th and on, on the west lawn of the US Capitol, and Thomas will be there as well. So we will
I
definitely
don't know.
glad to hear that.
I don't know if I can make that first weekend
Okay, great,
worldwide. I'm
because
gonna
that
try.
great. So
Even
you'll
if
be
I make it,
there.
I'll be there when I can for sure.
Awesome. Well, that's good because there will be always be a presence there. So yeah, I would like to meet you if I get to. So yeah, but I'm glad you're going to be there, and you have such a voice for gender equality and what the human body actually is, because the American public doesn't know what the male human body actually is. There's this missing piece that's not even in the medical textbooks.
And
How is a human?
that's what's so evil to me is there are different kinds of circumcision, as you know, low cut versus high cut. The low cut, of course, does more damage. And what kind happens to you is just kind of whatever the doctor's or nurse's whim was that day. The doctor or nurse might not even know the difference.
Well,
It's not even standardized. It's barely even regulated. I mean,
let's talk about that. So for our viewers, and it's like there's different types of circumcision, and they may not know that. So the original cut, 2,000 years ago was just the end of the foreskin was cut off. That was the original cut 2,000 years ago. Now we're excising tissue approximately at the edge of the foreskin. So the foreskin is completely ablated and the glands of the penis is exposed. So I'd like to talk about, so my circumcision, not only was the foreskin excised, but all of the skin on the shaft of the penis was also excised. So I have hair growing all the way to the scar line. The scar line is about here. If this was, a penis, and so if this was the glands of the penis and the heads of the penis, so the scar line's about here. Completely, all of the skin of my penis has been excised to where there's hair from the body hair growing all the way up to here. You're not, so everybody knows you're not supposed to have hair growing on your penis. And I also have what's called scrotal fusion. So my scrotum doesn't attach down here like a normal uh, male anatomy. My scrotum attaches here at the scar line because all of this skin was removed. So there's different cuts. They say C1 to C3, 2, and 1, and C0. So C0 would be all of the foreskin was ablated. Um, I would say that mine's a C negative through. So when you hand your child over to the doctors, and it may not even be a doctor, let's be clear. Circumcision is the only unregulated surgery in the United States of America. And oftentimes it's an intern who may have never done this before by themselves, or may have never done this before at all and didn't know what they're doing. But I I wonder if if my circumciser was a vindictive sociopath and enjoyed inflicting as much harm as possible.
And
So
what if they do it 50 times a day, every day for 10 years?
say it again.
And what if they do that 50 times a day, every day for 10 years?
Yes. Yes. So you don't know. So not only do you not know whether your child is coming back to you because they may not survive, because so let's explain that the modern diapers are very absorbent. A, a, a newborn infant may only lose 2 ounces of blood, and that infant may unlive. So, and a modern diaper will easily absorb that. And you may be like me, where it's extreme, or the child may come back with no penis at all. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, and I mean, I just feel like if we could put those 100 million adults, American adults, in a room and watch this conversation and watch the circumcision happening, it's so infuriatingly obvious what the answer is. And it's so infuriatingly obvious who's on the right side of history here.
Mhm.
And I'm getting angrier and angrier at nothing being done about it and about this same ignorance that I saw 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the same refusal for people to even consider it. When you invited me to come on here, I jumped at the chance because I want to do absolutely every single thing I possibly can to start really moving the needle more. And rates are going down in the US, but it's still, even on a lot of Reddit posts I'm talking about, when I see people are against it and I see people are saying, yeah, we know it's wrong, there still doesn't seem to be a lot of recognition or awareness of how severely bad circumcision can be, but also even when
Like
a
mine.
circumcision, yeah, like yours, even when a circumcision quote unquote goes well, even the C1 C4, it's still doing so much damage. It's still a horrific thing,
Mhm.
and it's just and there's people who do know, there are people who do know, and I do see an awareness of it, but I don't know. It's just intensely frustrating that nothing seems to change. And now I'm at the point where I'm just thinking strategy, strategy, strategy. What can we do?
Yeah,
And
you and I
this
are in
shirt,
accord with that.
and this shirt feels like one small piece of action that I can do every day.
Mhm. Have you seen
So,
the the prop money, they call it? The prop money is it's a we got foreskin 50s, we call them, and foreskin
oh my
20s.
God,
Have
no,
you seen those? Oh, they're
no.
super cool. Um,
That would simultaneously piss me off though, at least in the beginning.
what
I
sign?
like if I thought I found $100 bill and I
Yeah.
ran to it and I picked it up,
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
absolutely. Yeah, it's simultaneously. However, you're never going to forget when they pick up that 50 and realize what it says. Because I've watched, I've like dropped it and watched people pick it up and they're just like dumbfounded. It's like, what am I looking at? What am I looking at here? It's like their eyes are fixated on it. So it does work. Um,
something I've done, and not just for circumcision, for other issues as well, but certainly circumcision was among them. When I lived in London and LA, lived in big cities, is I made flyers, and I would go the inside of the subway or the tube at 6 a.m. on a Monday before rush hour, and I would plaster it around there. And I wouldn't, no private property, no property damage, no destruction of property. I would use tape that was easy to rip off, but I'd go to very, very public places, and I'd just post flyers around. And I was always hoping that it would end up going viral on social media. It never really did. But if enough people make enough noise on the same day and enough people post pictures of it and post it on social media from different cities around the world, there's a chance that it'll ignite. Because intactivism just needs that viral moment, that one viral moment to put it in the air, and then it'll kind of take off from there. I think.
Absolutely. And I thought that happened. I thought that would have happened when Sandra Bullock was on the Ellen DeGeneres show and told the world that she has facial creams made from the excised foreskin tissue of infant newborns. So
Yeah,
I think it I don't know how to get this across to people's heads is like yes, we live in a genital cutting culture, but the reality is we live in a genital harvesting culture. We're harvesting genitals from infants and selling them to the biotech and cosmetic industries.
Yeah. The problem, the problem, the reason why that didn't, why that wasn't the big Rowler moment is because for most of the men in that audience, to them, that's just a hilarious thing to say because to them, they don't care. They don't care. They're happy they're circumcised because having a foreskin is gross and women like it better if you're cut. So they have no idea they're using anything. So the fact that it's being sold to make creams is a ha ha thing. If they don't know they've been hurt, then it doesn't really bother them. And that's why, to repeat something I said in the beginning, which I've actually had a little bit of friction with intactivists over, and not too, but like they think that consent should be the number one argument against circumcision. I say it should be the second. I think the actual damage, physical and psychological damage, I think should be the first. Because if it truly was harmless, then it'd be very hard convincing people to care. And this, well, why should I really care if this hasn't really negatively affected me? Well, because it has actually negatively affected you, whether you know it or not.
Absolutely, yes. I say that the circumcision, the rate of problems is 100%, no doubt.
Mhm.
So can you talk, and going along those lines, can you tell our audience a little bit about the psychological damage? And we've talked some of the physical damage, obviously. So obviously men would like to have a larger, more pleasurable, better functioning penis, which all of that is excised when you remove the foreskin. I mean, you retain some use, but certainly not the pleasurable sex organ that you were born with. So please try and explain a little bit about the psychological damage they may not be aware of.
Well, there are numerous studies I'm aware of. One of which I know they wanted to look at does circumcision cause any kind of permanent psychological harm? Like,
Mhm.
could you put a baby 6 months later on an MRI and find a difference? And there are, in fact, studies that show that, yeah, you're doing something incredibly painful in the first few hours of a baby's life. It does imprint permanent, irreversible psychological damage. And I was actually reading today someone was talking about one of these studies that was actually stopped early because the people who were doing it felt that it was unethical to continue doing it.
I know
And
what
so they,
study you're talking about. There's
yeah,
the pain response for infants from
yeah,
circumcision, and the baseline was infants that did not receive pain killer. And yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. And it should be fairly obvious that there's a risk of psychological trauma. And I'm just trying to find some stuff here. I thought I had something pulled up. Um, it should be fairly obvious that if you inflict a extremely painful traumatic event on a baby who's 2, 3 hours old, that there's going to be an impact there, and it's very, very easy to get people on board with almost any other kind of traumatic event. Here we go, I found something. But as soon as it's circumcision, because we see it as this humorous, funny, normalized thing, they don't seem to be able to put the dots together that, but what you're doing is causing extreme pain on a baby's sex organ in the first hours of life. So, of course, you're going to get brain damage.
Mhm.
And this particular study here, if you can see, early circumcised men report lower attachment security and lower emotional stability, with no differences. While no differences of empathy or trust were found, other ones show that empathy and trust were affected. I think for the most part, empathy probably would not be affected, but it would not surprise me if it was linked with criminal behavior.
It could.
Certainly, lower security and lower attachment stability. Sorry, I cannot talk today. Lower emotional stability and lower attachment because you were inflicted a great deal of pain in the very, very first moments of your life. So that's your introduction to existence. Is severe.
Absolutely. So when the child normally would have been on the mother's breast and possibly nursing, so it's warm, it's got mom, everything's calm, but instead of the calm, warm touch of the mother, the infant is taken away, strapped to a cold plastic board, and then receives the most extreme form of sexual violence imaginable. And don't let your imagination run away with that. I've seen medieval drawings myself, but I use that as a start of the conversation of the actual event. And there's
And
so go ahead.
it's more than that, because people think about the circumcision itself, but they think about what about over the next week or so, as the tissue is still healing, the baby is still urinating in the diaper, and urine is acidic. So you have now acid constantly pressing into that open wound still.
Thank
I'd be
you.
very, I'd
Thank
be
you.
very interested. I'd be very interested. There was a study that circumcised babies cry the most. Circumcised baby boys cry the most in hospital, even in the 12 hours after or so the circumcision is finished. I bet you would find interesting results. In fact, I'm going to see.
No study has ever been done. No study has ever been done on the infection rate after circumcision. No study has ever been done on the complication rate after the circumcision. No study has ever been done on the psychological damage of circumcision. No study has ever been done on circumcision, the harms of circumcision. It's only, and again, let's go back to we live in a genital cutting culture, which isn't true. We live in a genital harvesting culture. So any research that's going to be done is going to be in support of that narrative.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you brought it up, because I think, is the only person other than myself who has said that the trauma does not stop at the circumcision. The trauma continues on every diaper change. When the caregiver is instructed to manipulate this recently excised tissue and apply Vaseline or whatever the fluid is they put on it. Go ahead.
yeah. I'm seeing here Texas Children's. It's normal for newborns to cry at the circumcision, especially in the first 20 hours. Well, yeah, of course, because they have an open wound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That,
But even if, because even if a study came out and said, well, we found that there's no brain damage, no changes to the brain, or it's temporary and it heals, there's still the psychological damage of knowing that it happens, and the sense of loss and the sense of grief. So if you come out and say, well, listen, we did a max study, and 2 years at 2 years old, we put babies in an MRI, and the circumcised babies are completely back to normal, completely back to baseline, completely back to function, 100% brain recovery. There's still the loss and the grief and the anger, and that is real, because what is
for life.
For life, right? And what is unquestionable is the physical damage and the loss of nerve endings. Mm-hmm. So even if you told me the brain fully recovered after the first 6 months or the first 2 years or the first 5 years, whatever it is, the anger and the grief of the loss, that never goes away. And that is very real. I mean, I'm feeling it right now. You're feeling it right now. Mm-hmm. So
absolutely, yes. And so are the other, any circumcised man who's come to the realization of his injury is aware of the psychological damage that he goes through every single day. And it's ironic, and you may want be able to expand on this, that it's common knowledge and everybody accept that there's psychological damage to a young girl when she is genitally mutilated, but then we turn around and completely ignore that fact when we talk about a boy that's been genitally mutilated.
Yeah. And I never bring up, I never like comparing FGM to circumcision when I'm doing a debate, or just when I do videos on it in general, because I find the conversation always ends up going off into the weeds, and okay, then it becomes that whole battle. So I would just say, okay, let's say we're not comparing it to FGM. Let's say we're comparing it to ripping a piece of the palm of his hands off. Do you think that's going to be traumatic? Or imagine slicing the tip of the nose. Pick the body part that you think is the equivalent of the most sensitive body part a boy has. There's a clue in that sentence right there. And then imagine taking a knife and a pair of pliers and a scalpel and essentially slicing it, ripping it off a baby when he's 3 hours old without painkillers. Do you think that's going to be traumatic?
Absolutely. I mean, even a heel prick for an infant is obvious for anybody within hearing range that the heel prick, it does cause pain to the newborn infant.
So why is the male reproductive organ the one part of the human body that magically can be cut, sliced, pulled, and ripped without negative effects, both physical and mental? I
You
mean,
tell
when
me, brother. I'd like to know.
it's so obvious, and that's what's so infuriating about it. And it's just the fact that circumcision rates are going down, yes, and I do see social media posts more and more. The pro-intactivists comments get the upvotes, and the pro-circumcision comments get the downvotes. So we're trending in the right direction, but I just can't understand why it's taking so long. If we lived in a country where it was the norm for the vast majority of the population to be fundamentalist religious, then I would understand. And I know we do have that segment of the population in the United States,
But
but the mode citizen, the mode American, is not fundamentally religious. They may be religious, but not fundamentally so. So it doesn't make any sense to me.
I like actually, I was talking to George M. Chapin with Intact America yesterday, and we were talking about that. So in the United States, approximately, again, it's the only circumcision is the only unregulated surgery in the United States, and there's no real numbers, but approximately 26,000 circumcisions are done for religious reasons in the United States. And really, there's a million circumcisions done in the United States and only 26,000 for religious reasons. So we're not here talking about religious circumcision. We're talking about circumcision that's been medicalized in the
Right.
United States. So let me ask you, how do you connect child mutilation to the larger question of human rights?
Oh, well, I'm going to go ahead and guess that your audience would share some of the similar leanings as I do. But I'm active in the men's rights space, and I find it interesting what we were just saying. Why is the male body part the one and only body part you're allowed to cut, mutilate, slice, rip, tear? And not only are they unable to put two and two together as to why that's bad, why that's wrong, why that's traumatic, but it's considered a source of humor. It's something we make jokes about. But in general, I would say that people just have a very difficult time coming to terms with there are bad things that happen that they've been complicit in. There's bad things that happened that they've participated in. There's bad things that have happened to them.
Mhm.
And one of the problems with talking about human rights and human rights violations is it's very often very uncomfortable, especially when it's something that it's not going to stop unless you take action, or if it's something that isn't going to stop unless you admit you've done something wrong to your own child. And that's definitely a major obstacle.
I
But
would think about that. So it's like, why is it that when a person weighs less than 10 pounds, they suddenly lose their human rights?
yeah, I mean, imagine if you tackled a 25-year-old and strapped them down, it would be considered serious felony assault. But when you do it to someone who is 3 hours old, it's a harmless, procedure, cosmetic procedure.
That's an interesting, so I've thought of this. It's an interesting concept. So what if a parent decided when their son is 17 years and 364 days old that they're going to strap them down and cut part of their genitals off? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Is that acceptable in the United States? Technically, it is. Technically.
I think after a certain age, I think fortunately, I do think there's legal protections
I,
for that.
I'm being somewhat
But
facetious, but
regardless, the point still stands. I mean, if it's and then you would ask someone, well, so of course not, that would be terrible. Well, why would it be terrible? Because you're strapping them down and attacking their peace. Oh, that's a bad thing to do? Well, of course. So why is it good when it's done to a newborn?
perfect. Perfect analogy.
You know,
Yeah, you've called circumcision the mutilation, and why do you? Yeah, again, so why do you think it gets minimized? Why do you think the circumcision that it is a human rights? It's a violation of human rights. It's a mutilation, but yet it's minimized. And you might have already touched on this, but
people don't want to admit it for various reasons. Some men don't want to admit it to themselves. Some political interests have an interest in minimizing the issue. I have talked to some excellent feminists on the topic who completely agree with everything that we're saying. I've talked to some feminists who aren't so keen with agreeing with what we're saying. And I find that the further up the food chain you go in terms of being a major lobby group, the more hostile to intactivism feminism becomes. Back in 2011, if you remember, in San Francisco, they wanted to put ending circumcision on the ballot, and a lot of groups protested that. But San Francisco Now, the National Org for Women, was one of them. Was one of the groups that protested.
Mhm.
You don't want to touch on religious groups. They obviously have a problem with circumcision being banned as well. I always say that there are Christians, Muslims, and Jews who all live by a code where they've decided, well, we're not going to follow that part of the Bible or the Quran or the Torah because well, we're modern now. And that's obviously outdated. That's obviously too old fashioned. And there's a lot of traditions that they don't follow anymore. Okay, great. Why not make circumcision just one more tradition that you recognize is now outdated and that you no longer do? Because I could take any person in America, and there's some parts of the world, like ultra strict conservative religious people who they do follow the book by the book. But let's go to America. Let's say a relatively progressive religious person who says, I am going to circumcise because that is what my holy book tells me to do. I guarantee you I can find 50 other things that holy book tells you to do that you do not do and that you would refuse to do. So why not make circumcision one more of those things?
Absolutely. That's well said. Well said. Because people do evolve. Religions evolve, people evolve, and their beliefs evolve. But somehow this is it's missing the train of evolution somehow.
Yeah, yeah. But
So
really, I mean,
go ahead.
I don't think there's a whole lot more to say. I mean, and to you and I mean, we could have telepathically had this entire conversation in our head without saying anything. I mean, we already know it's everything. It's just so obvious. I just think that intactivism really needs to, and there are many who do a fantastic job. I mean, blood-stained men, for example. But we need to make it. You hit on the word earlier: presence, presence, presence. People need to be thinking about it more than just once a year they go past a sidewalk where there's blood-stained men. They think about it for an hour and then they kind of move on. People need to be aware. We need presence, presence, presence. We need to be talking about it, bringing it up. It's a big deal, and it needs to be seen that way. It's a really freaking big deal. It's absolutely crazy. It is absolutely infuriating and crazy that it's normal, and yet it is. And so I can't act the way I want to because people would think I was an absolute lunatic. But acting like an absolute lunatic about circumcision is what would be normal. And if everyone knew the reality of it, then they'd be acting like lunatics too, because that is the rational response to it. That is the reasonable response to it. But there's also the function that people they don't want to think about circumcision in the same way they don't want to think about children starving in Africa or the homeless person starving at the end of their own street. I mean, how often do people drive by the homeless? How often do people drive by starving animals? How often do people, see an opportunity to give money to a charity and they say, nah, you and me every day, right? Probably. I mean, everyone watches us every day, so it's difficult to get people to care about issues. So I think our angle of attack needs to be communicating to circumcised men what they're missing and what they don't have and what happened to them. And I think that's the only angle of attack that's going to make any meaningful change. You have to make them directly care in a selfish way, en masse.
True. So, and that's the perfect, yes. How do we make them aware of their loss, basically? And because it seems to me, it's like I've heard it so many times, and it's like, well, it's too late for me. So what? So they're completely ignoring the fact that it's happening 3,000 times a day.
Well, actually, to that point, there is. I'm sure you know this is for your viewers. There is Forgin.
Yeah, I know. It's there is the possibility someday that men that have been mutilated at birth can receive some of their foreskin or a simulated foreskin back or a synthetic foreskin back. But why don't we just not cut the babies in the first place?
Yeah, yeah, because this may be a while away, and who says it's
Oh
going to
God,
be
yeah.
a full cycle? But I am signed up. As far as I know,
Okay.
I haven't heard from them in years, but I think I am signed up to be a guinea pig for human trials.
Okay.
I don't know if that's still true or not. I don't know if
Good
that's,
luck with
I
that.
remember at some point I filled out the thing. This was years ago.
Have you
So
ever, so talking in the streets and talking openly like you do, have you ever reached someone in that got the aha moment? Have you ever experienced that?
I've actually never talked to someone on the streets about it.
Okay.
In structured debates, yes. And in the wild moment, no. I was really hoping this shirt was going to spark more conversation. It
Conversation.
has not yet. I'll try again tonight. Um, but I'd be fascinated to have those kind of conversations.
What about the
I
structured? You talk about the structured talks you've had. Has anybody had an aha moment?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Tell us about it.
It was just literally them not knowing the anatomy of the foreskin, and it was actually a Zoom debate. And it was as simple as going to Wikipedia and clicking a few things. They didn't exactly all of a sudden become an intactivist, but they said, "Oh wow, okay, I did not know that. That's crazy. Wow, maybe we should think twice." So I don't know if I made them an intactivist on the spot or not, but I definitely made them think about it. And I think I did get them to agree that um, they weren't pro circ. They actually were pretty ignorant on it in the first place. Um, but they were willing to concede that okay, even if there's doubts, we shouldn't do it to a baby just in case.
Yes. Even if there's a doubt, we shouldn't do it to a healthy newborn infant, it, just in case. So I think just us speaking about it is raising awareness because I know a regret mom who recently, so her son is now 15 years old, and who recently, because of my work in intactivism, has stopped for a second and thought about what had happened to her own son. And she is now a regret mom. And I think she'll be a force in the movement.
I don't want to say good in the sense that well, it's good that that happened to the son, but it's good that there are people who are. It's good that the message is starting to permeate.
Mhm.
It's good that the truth is starting to ring out. So I'm glad that she's doing that.
That's yes. So we just got to keep. So again, I touch back on what you were saying. What needs to happen for the men? They need to realize that what the foreskin was that they had. Go
Yeah.
ahead. What else?
They need to realize that they've lost nerve endings, that they've lost sexual pleasure, they've lost sensitivity um, forever, and they need to just know the anatomy. They need to know they don't have a frenulum, they don't have a ridge bands, and that they've been personally affected, and in a significant way. In a
Absolutely.
significant way, they've
You,
lost function.
I believe that men would like to have a larger, more pleasurable, better functioning penis. And I think that we're going to respect everybody's time today. And if you made it this far in the conversation, I can't think of a better way to end it than what we just talked about. Well,
Yeah, man.
you got anything else you want to add?
Uh, if you haven't yet, Google these terms. Press
Okay.
pause and Google these terms.
Google those terms.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, man. That was great. It was fantastic.
Have a good one.
You too.